No,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, I think it's, and I'm looking at the county map here and seeing which counties don't have any results reported yet, at least not to, I'm looking at the New York Times website. It doesn't look like any of the votes for Senate in Hidalgo or Cameron County or anywhere in the Valley have been added in yet. In fact, many of the counties along the border, looks like Dimmitt County is an exception. They've got almost 40% of their votes in, but most of these other counties aren't reporting anything yet, which is odd. I mean,
It is odd. Before we went on, we were kind of trying to get everything together, sort of at our time frame. We were thinking maybe 7:30 would really start to see some numbers come in, maybe by 8. Now we're looking at 8:38, and really thought that we might have some more information from there, but I guess just not coming to us yet.
yeah.
All right, let's take a quick look now at the race for state senate in District 27, and we got again very very early days, 8% in. Edamina Hinojosa, very very big lead, but you know with all these things you have to take it with the appropriate levels of salt there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a relatively populated area. So, I mean, 8,000 votes can, that can go either, like you say, it can go either way still.
Sure.
Yeah, and that one does come from the valley and then go up the coastal bend up into Corpus. So a lot of little areas back in through there. All right, let's switch tacks now here for a little bit, and we talked a little bit earlier about, and I'm not even sure, I don't remember if we talked about this while we were live or before we got into it. You had brought up the idea of maybe violence. I know we talked about a little bit of the idea of violence we saw today in Georgia, I believe it was. A couple of bomb threats, a couple of polling places had to be shut down and evacuated for a little bit. Can you just kind of give me general thoughts, like is this something new, or is this something that we've always had a little bit of, but now maybe media environment, like 20, 30 years ago, maybe we don't hear about a bomb threat in Georgia being on the news?
Well, we've always had, a divide. There's always been some degree of polarization. I think it's gotten worse in the last 50 years. It seems like the American people have been sorting themselves into parties according to ideology. I mean, we were just talking about this today in class, that, 50 years ago, it was common for there to be liberals in the Republican Party and conservatives in the Democratic Party, and, it wasn't unusual at all. But these days, good luck finding a liberal in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I would argue there's a couple of conservatives in the Democratic Party, but I don't even know if you can really call them conservatives all that much. But they may vote more what people would say is conservative. But as far as the violence part, that is new. There's a history of political violence in the country, certainly. But at least in recent history, in my lifetime, I haven't seen the kinds of concerns that have been voiced by particularly elections officials, not elected officials, elections, people that work in elections. Mm-hmm. And again, this is, as you were saying earlier, so many of these things are just unfortunate, that these are, that people have got in their heads that this is okay.
Yeah.
To call in a bomb threat or to threaten and harass people as they're trying to enter the polls or coming out of the polls.
Or set fire to ballot drop-off boxes and destroy dozens of votes.
And I mean, I think this is a byproduct of the elevated, dialogue, the escalated dialogue, I guess you should say, surrounding thoughts that we should be, we should believe that elections are all rigged and they're all fixed and they're all. I mean, look, if there's one thing that the United States government and local governments do really well, it's administer elections. There are people that are focused on elections, full time to make sure that they count the number of ballots, that they issue the ballots to the proper people, that they verify identification, that they make sure that the number of ballots that they sent out or printed is the number of ballots that they got back, and that there's no big discrepancies there. There's lots of hands in elections, and these are people that they're just doing their job. For them to be threatened with bodily harm or accused of horrible things, it's more than unfortunate. I would say it's sad and part of it is, the heated rhetoric. Part of it is the violent imagery about what needs to happen in order to, properly administer politics in the United States. It's not violence. It's never the answer. And some of the assumptions that are made, which are informed by candidate rhetoric, are particularly damaging. This idea that everyone's out to get somebody. The government's out to get him, and so we have to defend our candidate by any means necessary. And if that means running people off the road, or if that means calling and this is
storming the U.S. Capitol to try to stop the election count.
The American people have a very short memory, but I
True.
think that's a really important factor to continue to keep on the minds of people. And this was not, an effort by people that were well-intentioned.
Nope.
They had a goal in their mind. They wanted to stop the certification of the election in 2020, and they were successful for a time. But cooler heads prevailed, and our election was completed, and it went through. We inaugurated a new president. The former president left the White House, and isn't it interesting? I don't know if you saw some of the things he was saying recently. Former President Trump saying, "Yeah, I should never have left." It's like, I
believe that yesterday, the day before that.
Right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I mean, and interestingly, it might have made for really good TV if someone would have had to physically escort him from the building.
But, is it worth it, though? Just to have that image of having to drag a president out kicking and screaming like they almost apparently had to do with Nixon. And I think that's the thing. It isn't, there are a lot of things about both parties where you can and should say a plague on both your houses. Gerrymandering, for example. Democrats have done it in Illinois and other places, just as Republicans have done it in Texas and Wisconsin. This is not, though, a plague on both houses. When former President Trump was almost assassinated, immediately President Biden, Vice President Harris condemned the attack. They wished the former president speedy recovery. This was the same way with pretty much all of elected Democratic officials. When Elon Musk jokes that no one, why aren't people trying to assassinate Harris? Trump didn't condemn that. Most national Republicans did not condemn that. Who's trying to stoke violence against Haitians in the Midwest? It's not Democrats. It's Republicans. If Democrats en masse were trying to stimulate violence, questioning the legitimacy of elections, trying to invade the United States Capitol, killing a police officer, not counting 2 others who have committed suicide since due to PTSD from the event. One of my students brought up in class, well, Democrats were certainly out of shape in 2000. Yeah, they were. But I don't recall Democrats trying to kill police officers or invading the House floor trying to find where the ballots were stored and stuff. This is this is the kind of rhetoric that leads directly to violence. Unfortunately, there is only one party right now that seems to have a monopoly on that. And that's so scary, because a democracy cannot function if you don't have at least two sane, sensible political parties that can that have their policies, but will find common ground when they have to. When that's all one-sided, then there is a real question of whether you have a functional democracy. Unfortunately, I just have to speak the truth on that.
I appreciate your opinion. We are going to, on the heels of that, we're going to check in with some of the latest election results that we have. I think we're going to start at the top of the ticket here with President, and we got 22%. And again, this is the national popular vote. Donald Trump up by 5% here. Again, really early popular vote.
And Harris closed the gap a little bit, although once again, with 22%, Trump could easily re-increase his lead.
Right, and it looks like some of the states still aren't even called. The West Coast, I believe, is still there.
They haven't even started.
Yeah, their polls are still open. We have I believe an update also from the Senate race, and that is 8% now, with 64% in. And I'll be honest, that is a little bit surprising to me. Again, we don't have the actual. We don't know exactly where those there are still the outstanding votes, but 8%, 64 in. I will say that's a bigger margin than I had seen projected.
Yeah, if you're Cruz, you can start getting cautiously optimistic that you're going to get reelected.
Right. And so, speaking of the Senate, wanted to take a look at the balance of power. I know that we talked earlier that this seat was in the Senate was one of the very few, basically, if any, seats that Democrats had really targeted and really thought that they were going to be able to take down. That's the Texas Senate balance of power. That's obviously not. We're talking about the U.S. Senate, and so before the night, very, very close. Now the Republicans have already flipped one seat. That would be in the West Virginia, the seat that Joe Manchin was not running for, and not really a surprise.
No, not in West Virginia.
No. So what we've got there with just that seat is 50-50 now. This was before the election, before that one was called. So now we've got 50-50, and it looks like at least, I will say at this second, based on the information that we have, it's looking good for Ted Cruz to retain his seat. There are also other Senate races, Montana specifically. The Sheehy-Tester race is going to be tough, and Tester looks like he's going to hard fight out in there.
Definitely.
And so it looks increasingly maybe like the odds are Republicans are probably going to pick up the Senate. If they win nothing else, how important would that be to just hold that house? That part of Congress.
Well, one thing that we've seen in most elections leading up to this one in the last several years is that, and even going back before recent history, Americans tend to like divided government. They just don't. They're not all that pro on either Republicans having all the control or Democrats having all the control. I mean, look, the U.S. Senate is, you could talk about the structural benefits that it gives to Republicans, right? That, the fact that there are more people that live in the 4 counties here in the Valley than live in the entire state of Wyoming, yet they get 2 senators and we get 2 senators. So the people in Wyoming have an outsized influence in that institution. The people of Idaho, the people of North Dakota, South Dakota. Why do we have 2 Dakotas anyway? I mean, other than, hey, we needed more Republicans when they were brought in as states. And because they serve these long terms, and only 1/3 of them come up every couple years, it is certainly instructive that we can certainly proclaim that Americans love divided government.
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting that they vote for a divided government, and then when they don't get results, they complain that they're not getting results?
Why isn't government doing anything?
Why isn't government doing anything?
Especially in this day and age when the parties have kind of hardened so much.
Right. Well, but what you were saying earlier about this is not an equal blame to cast on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got basically, one party that it's almost a sin to even talk to someone on the other side of the aisle.
Yep.
That's Kevin McCarthy.
I mean,
Yep.
this is very unfortunate, and I think it leads to bad government, which then feeds into the narrative that government doesn't work, or that government is inferior, that everything should be privatized, and I mean, these narratives are then woven throughout many other of the things that we deal with in our daily lives. That if government doesn't work, but as someone who spent most of my working life in the public sector, in both the military, in county social service, now as a state employee here in Texas, state employees, public employees, government can do good things. It's not always bad. Unfortunately, and once again, no offense to the mainstream media, present company excluded, that it's boring to talk about when government works. It's like, when was the last time we saw a major story in the mainstream media, I'm talking network media now, about a government policy that helped a bunch of people? No, it's always about when government fails, when government doesn't meet the expectation that we have for it.
Yep.
That's what we hear about. That's what gets eyeballs on the printed word. That's what gets people to tune in. That's what gets clicks on the internet. Is some scandal, controversy, conflict, rather than there's what a great example of people. One of the I was here for the 34 debate between Maida Flores and Vicente Gonzalez, and there were several areas of agreement between the two candidates, and rather than focus on those, oftentimes the commentary, and I'm probably to blame for some of this. We highlight the conflict. We highlight where the disagreements are, rather than saying, hey, here's an opportunity for us to work on something that's an important issue for many people, and we can work in a way together and cooperate. We're all going to have to give up something, right? They say, it's a good compromise when everyone's mad that they gave up too much.
It's accurate, though.
But it is, and that's what politics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, we need to vanquish the other people on the other side of the aisle because they are evil, they're anti-American, they're whatever. And quite frankly, that's not equal blame when it comes to those kinds of accusations.
And, and compromise is what makes, it is what makes government work. Democracy is the politics of the half loaf. You can't, George, the columnist George Will, who I admittedly don't agree with on a lot of things, but, other than baseball, but he did make a good point. Baseball is a game you can't love if winning is all that matters, because you have 162 games. The best team's going to win a third of the time. The worst team's going to lose a third of the time. The question is that middle third. And so baseball is a game you can't love if winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Democracy is that way too. You've had Democrats try to moderate on the border. We brought this up today in another roundtable that I did, that Democrats offered a very conservative very conservative policy proposal on the border, more funding for border security and so forth. And Republicans rejected it not because of the merits or demerits of the bill, but because their presidential candidate said you can't let Democrats go around waving, see, look at this compromise we did. You can't do that. I'll lose. Well, and what kind of a way is that to run a country?
Well, on that particular issue, this was a proposed piece of legislation that was negotiated by some of the most conservative people in Congress. Yep. Jim Langford in Oklahoma, who is not a shrinking violet by any stretch. He's I guess we would call the rock-ribbed Republican. Rock-ribbed. And even he said, yeah, this was a very conservative bill. It did a lot of the things that we wanted it to do. That is, provide funding for. You were talking about jobs on the border before, right? I mean, this was a bill endorsed by the Border Patrol Union. I mean,
the bill that Republicans claim that they're speaking for,
right? So, what other reasoning could we even point to say that it failed, other than to say there's one major party that doesn't want to legislate?
And it's also the fact that party has become so beholden to one person. It's not even a group of people. It's one person. That's not even a functioning political party. That's not a democracy. That's dadgum close to a dictatorship when one political party. Like I said, you're supposed to have at least two functional political parties to have a democracy. What happens, but you need those parties to be diverse in opinions. You need those parties to not have everything flow through one person. So what the heck do you do when you're in a situation where where the party will actually undercut its own proposal just to please one person? I mean, again, that's no way to govern. The problem is, as we may find out tonight, that's the way a lot of people in America seem to want government work.
Speaking of finding out tonight, let's take a look at last look at some of our races here. Let's start with U.S. District 34. That's the Gonzalez-Flores race, and we've got 42% in now. And Vicente Gonzalez, the Democratic incumbent, is now leading by 1,000 votes. Still incredibly close there, but again, only 42%, and again, very, very early days. And the next one we have is U.S. District 15. And Monica de la Cruz, 13% in, still not a giant number of votes in, but leading by 15,000 votes and 3-1. She's still maintaining that lead, no matter how small the percentage of votes are coming in. So I think on that note, I think we are going to wrap up here at Valley Central Election Desk. I want to thank you both so much for a very interesting conversation. Good talk about elections and politics in general, and I love this stuff. So I'm glad you both, Andrew, Robert. I'm really glad you guys came in.
You want to?
I may need to sleep tomorrow.
Yeah,
I will say I do. And I think this will be my last one. Disagree. I do not think we are going to have a winner tonight.
Well, it's not like we've been wrong before. So
I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again, I'm sure, at some time in the future.
All right.
Maybe tonight.
Maybe tonight. All right, we just want to thank everyone who tuned in tonight on our website, ValleyCentral.com, and on our Facebook page to joining us here for a look at the elections process, and politics in the Valley and beyond. This has been Valley Central Election Desk. Have a great night.